Please subscribe and hit the like button.
Well, good evening. Welcome to Yada Yada Radio. It looks like we have JB having returned from a long sabbatical. How are you, JB?
Good. Yeah, it's been a crazy summer.
I
JB.
bet so. You know, we're part of the craziness of our world has been the coronavirus. I'm going to bring it up again tonight because I continue to get really hostile letters from conspiratorial types that are trying to convince people that the vaccine is counterproductive. And what I want to do here is just be real direct and simple. If you're a covenant member, you cannot be conspiratorial. You can expose and condemn conspiracies, but you cannot promote them. The myth that the COVID vaccine is somehow harmful is not only incredibly stupid, it is a conspiracy. It falls right in the core of conspiracies, as a matter of fact. It's been one of the lead conspiratorial theories for at least 25 or 30 years that vaccines are manipulative and counterproductive. But if you're a covenant member, not only can you not be conspiratorial, which means all of these nincompoops out there that are speaking out against being vaccinated while using my translations and transliterations and claiming to be covenant, you're in direct violation of the one thing that both Yahweh and I have asked. Do not mix anything to do with Yahweh and conspiracy. Do not claim to be covenant. Do not use Yahweh's name if you're advancing any conspiratorial notion, including anti-vax. You are destructive of credibility. Second, as a covenant member, we have a responsibility to live our lives in a manner that is consistent with Yahweh's teachings. And hang on one second here. What that means is that we have to be responsible. And what I've told the people that work here at my property and that I meet, I said, listen, if you're going to be crazy enough to risk your own life with a virus that has elements of SARS in it, elements of HIV, and elements of Ebola, that has a gain-of-function trigger that makes it particularly harmful, that is killed millions of people worldwide, and that now is on a path through variations that make people more and more susceptible to it. If you want to risk your own life, that's stupid, but I'm a big advocate of free will. You have the right to be stupid, but you don't have the right to risk somebody else's life. And if you don't get vaccinated, you are 97% more likely to contract the disease and almost 99% more likely to pass it on to someone else. That's irresponsible. You're being an absolute jerk. It says that I only care about my conspiracy religion because that's all I know. That is how I define myself. I don't give a crap about any other human being. I will go ahead and risk their lives. No, I have no respect for that kind of attitude. It's just flat out wrong. Many of these people that are conspiracies too will deny the existence of COVID. They will say that, it's this, that, and the other thing, that it's all been exaggerated, whatever they wish to say. And the fact is that not only is it with us, not only have governments responded to it foolishly, but Yahweh 3,450 years ago told us exactly how we should respond when we have a pandemic. And the first thing he said is wear face masks. And yet many of the conspiratorial types are pretending like being told to wear a face mask is a deprivation of their liberty and an imposition of their government as opposed to just being responsible. But that's the whole nature of conspiracy. You have a miserable life and you want to blame somebody else for it as opposed to accepting responsibility yourself. So these things go hand in hand. So then, of course, Yahweh said that we as a society don't seem to understand, which is that when somebody gets sick with a virus, do not send them into the area within the community where people are the most vulnerable, which is what we're doing. We send them into our hospitals. Mm-hmm. That's the last place they should go. That's where people are sick. That's where people are particularly vulnerable. That's the reason why the majority of COVID deaths have comorbidity, and the people who are dying have 2 or 3 other fatal diseases that COVID just accelerated their demise. What we're supposed to do is to isolate them. We should have been responsible and created COVID wards outside of the metropolitan areas and let people heal there. Equip them the best that we can, but let people heal there. And then only after 2 weeks of being COVID-free, let them back into the general population. That is what is responsible. Beyond COVID, I want to talk a little bit about the demise of the United States. I was the only person doing radio shows, writing books, that said even before we invaded Afghanistan that we would, and that it would turn out to be a killing field for us, that we would squander blood and coin, making a bad situation worse. And at the end of it all, no matter if we stayed a week, a year, or 20 years, that when we left, it would be as if we had never been there. Mm-hmm. Well, that was pretty close to being accurate. The only thing that is slightly different is that the Taliban only controlled about 40% of Afghanistan when we invaded. Now they control about 90%. The Northern Alliance used to keep them in check. That they don't exist anymore. So we've actually increased the presence of the Taliban. We knew at the time that the Taliban was we were leasing, because we used the Taliban when we were trying to give the Russians a taste of their own in Afghanistan. We knew they were an arm of the Pakistani government, and yet we pretended like the Pakistanis were fighting this war on terrorism with us until such time as the Taliban prevailed and the Pakistanis couldn't stop plotting. Our situation, by the way, in Iran is even worse than what we experienced in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan's as bad as it gets. We not only spent hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion, doing the impossible, trying to convert Muslims to democracy, trying to change the society without changing the religion, such that the president thought we had 300,000 Afghani fighters that were well-trained and well-equipped. And I'm not sure they fired a shot. It's amazing how blind we can be to reality. But that's exactly as it was always going to be. And now we decided just to leave. We didn't bother to pull out our embassy staff, the NGO American staff, or any of the translators or those that helped us. We just left. We didn't even bother to remove our equipment where there's many hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. weapons there in Afghanistan that are now owned by fundamentalist Muslims. And in the ensuing chaos yesterday, what a tragedy. 92 people were killed by an Islamic suicide bomber. And we don't even want to blame the Taliban. We want to blame ISIS. No, there is no ISIS. There is an Islamic State. But the Islamic State was ISIS for about 15 minutes. Why is it we just can't call them what they are, the Islamic State? And while we're calling things what they are, can you tell me what the difference is between Hamas, the Islamic State, the Taliban, and Hezbollah?
Zero. Geography.
Geography, yeah.
That's good.
Well,
Geography.
I'm not even sure
the different areas, but they're pretty much the same.
Yeah, Hamas is in the Gaza Strip, and Hezbollah, for the most part, has destroyed Lebanon. They're now in the process of destroying Yemen. They're in the process of destroying Syria. They're in the process of destroying Jordan, which has just invited them in. There's an incredibly destructive force. But at this point, both of them are funded by Iran. And so the old lines of, well, you know, Hezbollah is different than Hamas because Hamas is a Sunni Islamic terrorist organization, and Hezbollah is a Shia. Well, the principal financier of Hamas are the Shias. So there really is no difference anymore, other than in religious cliques. It's very much like the Eastern Orthodox Church versus Roman Catholic Church. They have to have their own separate leaders. So at this point, the countries like Saudi Arabia, where the little Mo has an ego the size of the Kaaba, wants to go to war against the Iranians because they don't acquiesce to his authority. But we as Americans, after 20 years of this, still can't acknowledge that the problem is fundamentalist Islam. We're unwilling to say it, unwilling to admit it. When there's a suicide bombing, we say everything other than, well, that was
the motivation.
That was Islamic. And it's just hard to imagine how we could be that stupid, how we could lose that many lives and never come to the understanding of who the enemy actually is. We have spent, JB and Kirk knows this now, we spent the last 4 or 5 programs covering Towrah. Towrah is the next Moed Mikre that we're going to be celebrating. It'll be celebrated either on the 7th or the 8th of September, depending on what you view as observational versus astronomical.
Astronomical.
Yeah, there is a real sad thing that is happening in Israel as they're constantly talking about their high holy days, and their high holy days begin with Rosh Hashanah. So, guys, you know the Torah pretty well. Could you please tell me where Rosh Hashanah is mentioned in the Torah? No Babylonian.
Wait
a minute. So the high holy days begin with a day that isn't even mentioned in the Torah, and they claim to be Torah observant? Yeah. We must have a lie going on here, don't we? You can't be Torah observant and celebrate Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is Babylonian. I mean, but why would we be surprised? The Talmud. What is the Talmud? It is the Babylonian Talmud. That is the core text of Rabbinic Judaism. Is of course the Babylonian Talmud. Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year, and it's the Babylonian New Year. Congratulations, morons. And really, congratulations, morons. And then the second step of your high holy days is the day of affliction. The Day of Atonement. Oh, it's the highest holy day in your calendar. Yeah, Yahweh named the day that we're going to be talking about now after the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. Kaporif is a plural form of Kapurim. Same word. The mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant has the same name as this particular day. Now, every definition of Kippur speaks of being generous, of being kind, of being accepting, of reconciling a relationship, restoring the relationship. And yet, these religious nincompoops celebrate their high holy days by afflicting themselves. I mean, imagine, God's throwing a party, and he says, okay, we've been separated a long time. It's really good to have you back again. You know my name finally. You're actually Torah observant as opposed to Talmud observant. I've just whipped all your enemies. I've just transformed your land back into the conditions experienced at Eden. We're about to camp out together in this glorious city that now has this magnificent water feature running through it, and absolutely no religious edifices of any kind. They're all gone. It is literally like living in the Garden of Great Joy again. And the nincompoops say, boy, isn't that swell? Why don't we start whipping ourselves? Mm-hmm. This sounds like the perfect time to humble ourselves and afflict ourselves. Let's not party with God. Let's not be happy. Let's be miserable. What on earth would cause you to be that stupid?
Religion?
Yeah, religion. One of the things we're going to learn, because it's hard to imagine, but it just turned out to be this way. As I started rewriting the Mikra, the Moed Mikra, it was one volume of the old Yadayahu series. Well, it's now 3 volumes. And there are 5 chapters just on the Purim. God has an enormous amount to say about Kippurim. It is the most important day on his calendar. And it is an exceedingly complex day because it is equal parts celebration of the reunion of his family with Yisrael and Yehudah and the annihilation of all who have opposed him. In particular, religious Jews, but also Christians and every other religious and political entity that has opposed Israel. And so there's so much happening on this day. And once you reach it, there is no return. You can't say, well, now that I know that you're real and that you're here, I think maybe I'll give up Judaism now. Will you accept me? No. So this is it. Now, one of the things about Kippurim that is different is that Pesach matzah in Bikurim, which is Yahweh calls chag matzah, something else that Jews religiously screw up. Matzah has become an ingredient in Passover when, in fact, Passover just happens to be the first day of chag matzah. But what we learn is that Pesach matzah and Bikurim, they're open to everybody. So long as you embrace what it means to be Yisrael, so long as you are Torah observant, so long as you are have met the conditions of the covenant, you're welcome. It does not matter if you're male or female, if you're young or old, if you are ethnically Jewish or Goyim. Matters not. And Shabbat, so after we get through Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, which is open to everybody, Shabbat is the ultimate open party Because on Shavuot, where Yahweh's children, the beneficiaries of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, are being enriched, being empowered, being enlightened, it's a day that we should want other people around just so that they can see what Yahweh is doing for us. And on that day, we're being prepared to do what is our primary job. We are the living embodiment of Towrah. In fact, it's kind of a funny thing is I was going about rewriting the introduction to God. There is what will now be 2 chapters, but after the introductory prologue, I've written I think it's right now at about 120 pages, so it's clearly going to have to be 2 chapters. But it's called Why You, Why Me? Mm-hmm. Why are you reading this? And why am I the person who is sharing it with you? And one of the things that we do in this chapter is I go through, after I explain why you and how God reaches out to people and how he chooses who he wants to be as part of his family. We don't choose God. God chooses us.
Yeah.
That's just obvious when you read how he interacts with people. And it's his home. It's going to be for all eternity. He has every right to choose who he wants to spend eternity with. But one of the things that brings us here is that one day I'm minding my own business. It's right after 9/11, and God asked me to engage on the mission of exposing and condemning Islam, and I'm not really keen on the idea. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and I don't even know who Yahweh is, so I've never even heard the name Yahweh. So, and I'm an agnostic at the time. It doesn't really sound like a lot of fun. No one's ever done that and survived it.
Correct.
And, the transition began because he said, reach into your pocket, and there in my pocket was the 91st Psalm. And so the 91st Psalm becomes a significant part of the why me. What was interesting relative to our primary calling, which is Towrah, the day that occurred was Towrah. So God's really serious about our role. We are the living embodiment of Towrah. Everybody who is part of the covenant family is to be engaged in Towrah, sharing Yahweh's message while warning people who are religious and political and conspiratorial that they're headed in the wrong direction. Now, if we do our job well, and understand, God does not work alone. So, since he does not work alone, he is dependent upon us doing our job well. Now, keep in mind, God, I was going to say God can cheat, but that sounds as a pejorative.
It gives it a negative.
Yes, God can influence the outcome. How about that? And so, while he is unwilling to work alone, and therefore he is dependent upon us doing a good job of Towrah, or there is no Kippurim. There is no Kippurim if we do not do a good job of Towrah. I'll explain that more in a moment. The way that God changes the likelihood of our success together is with his set-apart spirit and his word. He equips us to perform. Mm-hmm. So he makes it possible for us to do what we're doing. That doesn't change the fact that he is still reliant upon us accepting his help and acting upon it. Yahweh's not going into Egypt without Moshe. Just all there is to it. He's the only person qualified on the planet. God's not going into Egypt to liberate his people without Moshe. He's not building the ark and saving people with an Asama without Noah. He's not forming the covenant relationship without Abraham. He's not unifying Yisrael and setting up the country in Jerusalem, without doubt. Sometimes there's lots of people to work with. Sometimes there are very few. He's not communicating to us without prophets. As a matter of fact, we go from Malachi in 450 BCE all the way to Dode's return in 2033 without a prophet. Not one. Without a prophet, God doesn't communicate anything new to us. All we have is what he has said in the past. Now, that's a lot, and we ought not feel deprived in any way because you could spend 20 lifetimes doing this, and you still couldn't process all this there to understand, and he gives us much more than we need. But the fact is, God doesn't communicate without a prophet. There has not been a single Yehudim from 450 BCE to the present date willing to work with Yahweh as a prophet. That's why there have been none. So God does not communicate to humankind other than through his words aided by his Spirit. But that's not anything that's new. He's just reinforcing what he's already shared. So God is actually dependent upon us doing this job well. And when I say this, it makes it sound like, we're big shots and God's not, and he can't do it without us. That's not the message. The message is that God created the universe because he wanted to engage in relationships that were family-oriented. He wanted to share his universe with sons and daughters. That's what he wanted to do. So anything that he does that is inconsistent with that is counterproductive to the reason he created the universe and authored life. So God can't violate the prime objective. Prime objective is to do stuff together. So the moment he says, I don't want to do stuff together anymore, I'm going to do it independently, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is God aware that if he's going to use people like us, that it isn't going to be as magnificent and as clear and as perfect as if he did it himself? Of course. Doesn't change the fact that's the way he wants it done. That's the way he has always done it, and he's not going to change. At this moment, we're the best he's got. We've got our flaws, for darn sure.
When you got a damaged tool, you take a little extra work to make it work, but you can still make it work.
Just a lot of tape, a lot of duct tape.
One of these days, we're going to share.
It's a little harder to do the digging, but the shovel gets the job done.
It does. Yeah. It does. But that's, again, it's a shovel in a masterful hand, and he likes doing it this way. It's consistent with his intent. So it is exceedingly important that we who are in the covenant do our jobs well on Towrah, so that God's celebration with his family on Kippurim, which, by the way, does not involve us, goes well. Even if you are ethnically Jewish, Kippurim really does not involve you. Your relationship's already reconciled if you're in the covenant.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter your ethnicity, already reconciled. Kippurim is the day of reconciliation. It is our job of those who are in the covenant, who have become immortal, who have become perfected, who have become adopted, who have enriched, empowered, and enlightened, to capitalize on that opportunity. How we ended the last program. Don't spare your voice. Blow this trumpet, shofar. Get people's attention. Tell the family to come home. Leave religion. And that's what God is counting on us doing. That is, these books, these programs all exist for that purpose, to reach Yisrael and Yehudim and Goyim who are willing to listen, so that we capitalize on the covenant and on Kippurim. This is the day of reconciliations. And so we are educating and pleading with Yisrael and Yehudim to come home. And if we do that job
we're
well,
just celebrating the return of the prodigal son.
yes. And I'm a little.
That's all we're doing.
Well, I love the concept of the prodigal son, and clearly I see Yisrael and Yehudim and Yehuda in it. I become really antagonistic towards anything that comes out of the Christian New Testament. Mm-hmm. So, and I know JB, you've never been a Christian, so you don't see it that way, and you would you recognize that it is the story of Yisrael and Yehuda coming home, although it should be the prodigal sons under those circumstances, because they're not only reconciling the relationship with one another, which does not happen in that story. So just to show you how the Christian New Testament screwed up, they don't reconcile. The brothers are still bellyaching against each other. And the whole concept is that Yisrael and Yehuda mend the fences between them that they became so divisive at the end of Solomon's reign. And then they reconcile the relationship with Yahweh. And it is all about coming to appreciate his name, his covenant, and his Moed Mikre. So yes, we're on the sidelines cheering them on, and if we do our job well, then it naturally leads to camping out with God, to Sukkah. What I was going to say is a bit of a spoiler alert as we go through this, is that my wife got really angry at me about 3 weeks ago. She put, just a note, Yeshaya 55 through 65 on a Post-it note, put it on my computer screen and said, you really need to translate this and deal with it. And you probably need to deal with it now. And then she said, you're wrong about the Zeroah. And I said, no, I'm not wrong about the Zeroah. There are three Zeroah. The three Zeroah are Moshe, who is the productive shepherd. There's Dod, who is the protective ram. And there's Yosha, who is the sacrificial lamb. Those are the three mighty Zeroah, the three most important people. And he said, no, you're wrong about the Zeroah, and you really need to be translating this. And I said, God, I'm trying to rewrite these books. I don't have time to go there right now. I'll get there, but I just can't do it. And, she was miffed at me. So I spent the last week or so beginning at Yeshaya 55, which I actually had started already because I was trying to conclude the last book on Moed. So we now have 3 completed volumes on the Moed Mikre. So the good news is, as we move and start celebrating Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah, they're on the bookshelf at yadayah.com. Go open them. The material is fresh, recent translations, accurate, and expansive. So I had already done Yeshaya 55, 56, 57, and we shared some of this in a previous show. It's extraordinary what it says, and it's talking about us. Not just me, it's talking about us. And it introduces a fourth Zeroah, the arm of God, as the fourth Zeroah. And It goes all the way through 65, and it's one story about Yahweh before he returns, reaching out to Goyim as a team of people to awaken his people and to tell the story. So God is really serious about this. For 2 weeks, I've just wanted to crawl in a hole and say, no, it can't be true. Let's go back to being Yada and anonymous. That's much more fun. And for 2 weeks, every time I turn around, it's another and another and another and another. And you say, okay, God, let's change the subject. And I keep on saying, well, if I translate more, I'll work my way out of this. No, I just get in deeper. So we will get there, but it's important for every covenant member to understand how important this job is to awaken Yisrael and Yahudah so that they come to appreciate what the Day of Reconciliations actually means to Yahweh and to them. Israelites and Yahudim who throw off the yoke of religion will come to embrace Yahweh, coming to love his name at long last. Well, that's one of the reasons we know there'll be no religious Jews in Shamaim. They despise his name. However, for those who have come to destroy Jerusalem and annihilate Jews, their rendezvous with destiny will not go as they had hoped. Well, we have a woofing dog. I don't know if that's Paint or if that's at your place.
No,
JB,
but he doesn't woof that good.
Okay, that's probably at your place, JB. Yeah, it's a pretty loud dog there in the background.
And that's 3 rooms away.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing.
We got a new puppy, so our older dog is having a lot of fun playing with the puppy and teaching her how to bark.
Okay. Well, the Moed Mikre, designated by Yahweh as Yom Kippurim, has become known mostly as the Day of Atonement. There's nothing wrong with atonement except for the fact it has religious connotations. And people think they need to atone for their sins. No. It's Yahweh doing the reconciling. Over time, rabbis have altered God's testimony to suggest that atonement, which is, as I said, it's a religious term, and it actually means to reconcile. It fooled a lot of people. However, if you were to say, what does atonement mean? There isn't one in 1,000 that's going to say, well, it means to restore and reconcile a relationship. That's not what people think. It could only be achieved, according to religious Jews, the rabbis, by afflicting oneself. And as a result, Yahweh his intended reunion with his people is a time of religious suffering and deprivation whereby Orthodox Jews abstain from all food and all drink for 25 hours. God's throwing a feast. As a matter of fact, it's called Chag Sukkah, the umbrella for this event. God has 3 Chag celebrations. There's Chag Matzah, Chag Shabbat, and Chag Sukkah. So God is throwing a festival feast, and they abstain from food and drink and deprive themselves for 25 hours. It is as if they dread reconciliation. And I can see, if you're a rabbi, you are going to dread reconciliation because you aren't going to be on the positive side of that. Our dictionaries tell us that afflict is from the Latin afflictare. It means to be struck and cast down. So if God's purpose is to reconcile fallen man unto himself, well, that would be the antithesis of the intended result. And it is in direct conflict with Yahweh lifting us up so we can stand beside him. Now, to appreciate Yahweh's perspective on this day, realize that his Pesach and Matzah sacrifices are now behind him. With Bikurim, he is enjoying the result as his covenant family is born. He's a proud father. God has watched his Ruach Kodesh, set-apart spirit, enrich and empower, enlighten his young family on Shavuot, so that the beneficiaries of the covenant become more capable and more like him with every passing day. And then there is the tremendous satisfaction of witnessing us perform on Towrah, boldly proclaiming the truth on behalf of his people. And at long last, Yisrael and Yehuda finally respond. They reach up to Yahweh. They exclaim his name, inviting him into their lives. All the while, his chosen Messiah, is removing the trash, ridding the world of those who have harmed his people, while his spirit transforms the scarred earth into the garden of great joy. Now, there is an aspect of what is written in the later chapters of Yeshaya, 59, 60, 61, 62, that suggests that Dode is not the one who is going to, well, Dode is clearly the one that's coming back. He's going to be the king of kings. But Dode is not the one responsible for retribution, for holding those who have abused his people accountable. It looks like that job is going to be done prior to his return. So we will explore that as we get into those passages in future programs. Now imagine observing God's face for the first time, looking into his eyes, seeing his smile, relish his feelings when we first walk up to our Heavenly Father in anticipation of a hug. Consider the thrill of having Yahweh actually write his Torah guidance upon our hearts, equipping us to make the most of this opportunity. Think about the songs we're going to sing, the sights we're going to see, the people we're going to get to know, the things we're going to understand. And that is what will happen on this day. Yom Kippurim is the Day of Reconciliations. It celebrates Yahweh's long-awaited reunion with his people. It is a welcome home party. As part of his family, we are prepared for the final step in our journey when we camp out with our Father. Now, from this perspective, imagine how out of place you'd be if in the midst of all of this celebration you said, let's whip ourselves. I got an idea. Let's afflict ourselves and deny ourselves. Let's bow down and be religious. Let's ignore Yahweh's name. Let's ignore him, as a matter of fact. Let's turn to our Babylonian Talmud. It'll be great. Let's do everything that caused us to be separated from him in the first place. The moment Yahweh finished explaining his thoughts on Towrah, this is what he said. This is from Kara, which means to call out an invitation to meet. 23:26. Then Yahweh declared the word to Moshe, saying, exclusively, only, during the 10th day of the 7th month is the day of reconciliations. This exists as a set-apart and special, a Kodesh, invitation to meet, Mikra, for you all to approach, La Atem, you being plural. Pretty straightforward, exclusive. Just on this day, 10th of the 7th month, is the day, Ha-Ze-Yom, of Ha-Kippurim, of atonements, of pardons, of forgiveness, from kafar, to make reconciliation by purging and covering. And it's not just being covered over, it's having everything that was blocking our ability to relate to God, to engage with him, all that's purged, gone. And then we're covered over in a garment of light so that we appear perfect in God's eyes. Now, it's one of the very first times. It's really, in fact, very seldom that we see God make a declaration with ak, which means exclusively, only. So there's something about Kippurim which will occur once and on this day. The numbers designating the time here are instructive in themselves. This is the 7th month, which is the time of promise. It is the 10th day, symbolizing our enrichment. 7 is conveyed by Zayin, which is a plow, removing the numeral 7, not the word 7. So word 7 is Shabbat. But the numeral 7 is conveyed by the letter Zayin, which is a plow, removing weeds while turning over the ground and preparing it to receive nutrients to support new growth, so long as it's moving in the right direction. The wrong direction, it doesn't accomplish anything. It's more like an anchor. 10 is portrayed by the yod, Yahweh's hand. The yod is the numeral 7 in Hebrew, reaching down and out to us at this time. As is the case, however, with another Moedim, eternal witness, Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations, is a Mikra Kodesh, set apart and special invitation to be called out and meet to an, what's it called, an S&M party, I'm sure. I'm sorry for being rabbinical. No, they're going to be Torah observance. It's a chag. It's a festival. This designation helps us shape our appreciation for how it should be observed. It is an opportunity to read and recite the Torah and to proclaim Yahweh's name, to invite friends and family, and to summon God's people. Kirk, I think you did your famous pictograms, these letters on Kippur. I would be not speculating much to suggest you probably did that, didn't you? What does Kippur say in the letters?
In the letters, well, you start with a cough, and this is my interpretation of it as far as I can do in the context that I'm reading. But it's an open hand that welcomes. It can be a negative, but in this case, that would be ridiculous. The yod that follows it is the hand reaching down, of course, from Yahweh. It's an authority. It's the one who reaches down to lift up. We're all familiar with that. And then the pay is by communication, using nourishing words in the language. That's followed by the wa, for the purpose of increasing the family. What other purpose would there be? And the rosh, or resh, is the old-fashioned name, but the rosh is more modern, with those who shema, or shama, and those who shema the Torah. So if you can find something negative in that, I can't. It's mercy. It's all good. Yahweh's doing everything. We just have to show up and participate.
Yeah, actually, when you deal with the kof, which is kof actually means palm. It's the hollow of a hand. Is what kof describes.
It can cover as well, by the way.
Yeah. So it's an open hand that where the hollow of the hand is the key element of it. When I was translating the later chapters of Yeshaya, he specifically says that what I'm calling the little z, the fourth zeroah, is in the palm of his hand. It's in the kaf. So this is a place where God can deploy us and protect us and empower us and use us and afford us even his authority.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to be in the hollow of Yahweh's hand, the kaf. That's as good as it gets. It may even be better than Yahweh's first letter in Yahweh's name, which is the hand, the arm and hand that is reaching out with an open hand to us that we can reach up and grasp, that can lift us up. Mm-hmm. Because while that hand is there and when we reach up to it and grasp hold of it and walk alongside Yahweh, it is even better to be in the hollow of his hand. This is God said,
that's him lifting you up.
Absolutely. And lifting you up on a high at that point and protecting you. And that means that you're in the center of what he is focused on.
I like that better.
So a kaf is a really, really important concept in Hebrew. And the pei also plays a very important part of that same passage, where God says, from his mouth, pei being the mouth of God, that from his mouth, he is going to provide a new restoring name. And it says, I'm going to give you all an entirely new designation, and the new designation is going to be renewing and restoring and reaffirming. You're really going to like it. It's kind of like I've been calling you a sucker all this time. And so I'm going to really give you a name. Because I haven't given you a name so far. I've just used a bunch of titles, and the first one was sucker. So maybe it's time that I give you a name. But the mouth of God is a really important thing, because that's God's spoken word. Yes. That's us listening to God. When he tells us to Shama, we're listening to him speaking to us. So it is the mouth of God, and therefore, what I think is an exceedingly important concept. And then the Rosh, as we explore Yahweh's explanation of this day, one thing becomes particularly obvious is that there's only one way to God.
Yes.
And that one way to God is in our minds. We think our way to him. We don't act our way to him. We don't beg our way to him. We don't pray our way to him. We don't kneel our way to him. We don't donate our way to him. The only way to God is in our minds. We have to listen to what he said, observe what he has written, contemplate it,
consider.
Come to know it, come to understand it, come to act upon it. All of that takes place in our minds.
That is correct.
So, with you look at the Rosh as the last letter of Kippur, what you find is the human head, eyes that can see, ears that can hear, a mouth that can speak, but mostly it is a profile showing our head where we think. So it becomes an exceedingly important word. Kippur is used 8 times, always in the plural form, Kippurim. Now it's amazing that God only uses it in the plural form relative to this day. Have you ever read or seen a Jewish religious site that calls this day Kippurim?
No.
Always Yom Kippur, isn't it?
Yom Kippur.
Always Yom Kippur. But why would you change it if God says it's Kippurim? He's consistent. It's always Kippurim. Now, there's a reason for him saying it's the day of reconciliations. It's Yisrael being reconciled with Yehudah, and both Yisrael and Yehudah being reconciled with Yahweh.
There you go. Yep.
2 forms of reconciliation on the day. Now, the verbal root is kafar. It means to make reconciliation by purging and covering. And this indicates that by purging us of the residue of religious corruption, we are cleansed of the stain and stigma of these things. Then we can be covered in Yahweh's light, coming to appear perfect in God's eyes. Now, as we have shared, Kippurim can be conveyed atonement, especially if it is cleansed of its religious trappings, because to atone means to repair the damage done by an otherwise offensive expiation. To expiate is to extinguish any guilt incurred so as to make amends. Now, we humans are not extinguishing our guilt. God's job.
No.
And so beating yourself up, depriving yourself, isn't going to get that done. Atonement is a specific form of forgiveness which includes a pardon, which leads to reconciliations. So the name Yahweh assigned to this day is consistent with the message of Passover and unyeasted bread. These are related and sequential events, truly one following the other. Now, based on these insights, Kippurim is most accurately translated as reconciliations, as purging the past to provide a pardon. It is a time for forgiveness and thus to repair the relationship. The day of reconciliations is between Yahweh and his people, Yisrael and Yehudah. It has nothing to do with Goyim, other than being among those who played a role in announcing Yahweh's intent regarding Kippurim, and to have perhaps increased the number of beneficiaries, which is our collective mission, even to have explained the prophetic implications of this day. Goyim, like ourselves, will be celebrants in the audience, applauding. Nothing more.
Works for me.
Yes. We played a role, but our role is now over. Once we pass Kippurim, for the most part, we're retired. We get to enjoy Sukkah as we camp out with God. So we're just going to consider ourselves fortunate to be allowed to witness this reunion and to have been adopted into the same family. Now, there is another related aspect of Kippurim, and I mentioned that earlier when we began, which is Kipporeth. Kipporeth, like Kippurim, is based upon kafar. Kipporeth means to cover, and it describes the cover of the Ark of the Covenant, which comprises the mercy seat. It would serve as the place of reconciliation when the priest sprinkled the Kipporeth, the Aaron Edut, so the Kipporeth of the Aaron Edut, which is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Witness, 7 times with the blood of the sacrifice during the day of reconciliations. Now, for context, here is just one of the 27 times the Kipporeth is mentioned. When Moshe went into the radiant tent of the eternal witness to the restoring appointments, that's Moed, to speak with Yahweh, he heard the voice speaking to him from above the Kipporeth, above the mercy seat, the place of reconciliation to cover the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, representing purging the past to cleanse the soul, which was beneficially associated with the Ark, the Aaron, of the enduring and restoring testimony, Ha-Eduth, and for the purpose of making connections to understand, and to cherubim, speaking with him. So I don't know how you can miss it, how you can say, I don't get the association between these two things. The mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant and this day of reconciliations, Yom Kippurim and Kipporeth.
I also don't get how you cannot miss mercy throughout this entire thing. I mean, everything, Paul be damned. This is the way to get. This is Yah showing up His mercy again. I mean, and if He's doing that, why Anah interpretation?
Yeah, why?
Gosh, yeah.
Respond to the invitation. Yeah. So the mercy seat is something that Yahweh says is directly associated with the restoring appointments, the moed. And so if the mercy seat is directly associated with the moed, which moed do you think that Kapporeth would be associated with? Is there any other choice but Kapporeth?
Well, that's Kapporeth. Passover and Matzah, yeah.
Well, it's Kapporim. Kapporeth and Kapporim are the same word.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I went brain dead there for a minute.
So as a merciful cover, Kapporim and Kapporeth are symbolic of the garment of light provided by the set-apart Spirit. She adorns us in it when we become covenant, giving us the appearance of perfection. So here's how the story of Kapporim develops in the Torah. Then Yahweh declared the word to Moshe, saying, exclusively during the 10th of the 7th month is the day of reconciliation. This exists as a set-apart and special invitation to be called out and meet, for you all to approach. Then your soul, wa eth nefesh atem, that part of you which is capable of being observant and responsive, should respond. Anah. Well, he's talking about your soul, and then he says it should respond. Rather than afflict, just think about, we're only 2 words now into the instruction, and how difficult it is to get to the religious interpretation. Is it possible for you to deny your soul with fasting?
Well, last I checked, food doesn't really nourish your soul.
No, it's impossible. We cannot deny our soul. We can't afflict our souls. Our souls is the part of every animal that enables an animal to observe and respond to their environment. A plant can't do that. But an animal can observe their environment and can respond to it. And so it says, then your soul should anah. Well, the soul is the part that can respond, and then God is saying it should respond. How do you he didn't say it's then your flesh should be afflicted. If he was going to say you should abuse something, we can abuse our flesh, but we can't our soul. And our soul is the very aspect of us that is capable of responding. And so God asks that part of us, our soul, the essence of who we are, that part of us that is observant and responsive, should anah. And there is no question that the primary meaning of anah is to reply, to respond, and to answer. And no one denies that. There are very few places where anah takes on the dark side. A lot of Hebrew words have a dark and light side. We know that. But every time that anah is used in a sentence like this, you have to assume that Yahweh is using it in the positive light, unless there is no possible way to render it that way, because the primary meaning of anah is respond, answer, and reply. So then your soul...
Traction. Oh, sorry.
Well, I don't know. I mean, and your soul should respond. So this is an invitation to be called out and to meet, for you all to approach Yahweh on a day of reconciliations. Pretty straightforward how you're going to translate anah. And then your soul, that part of you that is observant and responsive, should respond. And appear karab. Karab means to come close, to draw near. to present oneself while staying in close proximity. Should appear before Ishe. Ishe is the feminine manifestation of God's fiery light. When God appeared to Moshe on Mount Horeb, he appeared as an Ish. It's the masculine word for fire. Here he is using the feminine word for fire. Fire is such a wonderful symbol, not only for the set-apart spirit, but for God himself. So he's using the feminine here to address the set-apart spirit, but fire is the center of the campground. When we camp out with God, the campfire is the heart of our campground. It's what we sit around to tell stories, it sets the atmosphere, it provides light, it provides warmth, it enables us to cook our food for the feast. The smoke of the fire rises just as God is lifting us up. It's capable of transforming something physical into something that is energy, both light and heat, just as we are transformed from physical beings to spiritual beings. So fire has warmth. It provides light. It enables us to be nourished in a healthy and pleasant way. It draws us into an environment where we can congregate together. It is used to refine. And it's this transformative nature from the material, that wood that you put into it, something combustible that is physical, and then it becomes energy. So fiery light is a really marvelous term for Yahweh to use for our adoptive mother, the spiritual mother, our set-apart spirit, to approach Yahweh. So I'll read that again. Then your soul should respond and appear before the feminine manifestation of the fiery light to approach Yahweh. My guess is you probably did a analysis of Anah. Would that be correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
And what did you find?
Well, I say we're told to afflict ourselves and even bow down. Well, that's what the meanings they give you in some of the lexicons. So I said the flexible festival feast, reconciling relationship, had made a nasty turn, if that's true. So I looked at the letters, and of course you have a attitude or a perspective in the eye towards the invitation, which lead from potential where we are, where we start, all the way to the upright and engaged one walking towards God and becoming, that's a symbol of the hay. So I mean the letters are pretty open there, and I was thinking about the ayin too. It's always an open eye for seeing and observing. And compared that with, obviously, Paul's eyes, which were blinded, and started his whole road down the wrong path. So
an open eye, the sperm and seed. So it's either a seed that's taking root and growing a new life, or it's the sperm and the genesis of a new child. And then a person who is standing upright, reaching up, looking up to God.
Right.
So what you have is the observant child grows such that they can stand up and reach up
relate
to
with
God.
Yeah.
That's
what
enough.
A picture, huh? And how do you? And I said to myself, how do you get anything else out of that? How do you get affliction and bowing down? Where's the bowing down?
Well, the sperm is traveling up,
and to the
and
left,
the person is standing up. But you're not looking closely. That is a whip in the two hands of the individual. A couple of whips. Those are not hands. Those are really whips.
Those are whips.
Yes, you're just not reading it. You're not reading it correctly.
Thank you for correcting me on that one.
So, Karab is another one. I mean, you're dealing with horizon, the Q.
Yeah.
Rosh is a observant individual, and Be'eth is a home.
Family home.
Right.
What a great picture. So you gather at the light.
A new day for the observant person in the family home.
Mm-hmm.
And it means to come close.
Yeah. I'll tell you.
So the words tell a story.
The
no. So then your soul should respond. Listen, God is inviting us to a party. What do you think? If God's going to invite you to a party, what is the most reasonable, responsible thing to say? No, I don't want to go. God's going to be there? No, I don't want to go there. No, let's tell God hell no. Tell him to pound salt. Heck, I want to go back to Sodom. The heck with that. Jeez. No, let's breathe some of that smoky air in California.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my response is when and where.
When and where, yeah. And unfortunately,
can I bring anything?
He tells you when and where. So it's even better. So, and your soul should respond and appear before the feminine manifestation of the fiery light to approach Yahweh. So there's something about Yahweh's light, the feminine manifestation of his light, that is going to be a means of conveyance. It's going to help us get from here to there. So our soul is our nephesh is our soul, and it's our consciousness. It's common to all animals. It's the essence of life. It makes us aware. It's able to be observant, able to be responsive. It is precisely what we need to shamar, observe the Word of God, and anah, respond to it. It's pretty obvious. We were designed for this. Now, Yahweh provided humankind with a nasama, a conscience, to mitigate the soul's one inadequacy, and giving us the ability to think logically and make reasoned and moral decisions. This is the aspect of our nature that is currently ebbing away, ceasing to be functional in most people. That's why you don't have a lot of time. If you are a Jew listening to this, first of all, Yahweh tells us that his spirit is going to be withdrawn, that the nasama that he gave us so that we could think our way to him is ebbing away, becoming dysfunctional. And between now and Yom Kippurim, at least 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to die. So you don't want to wait. But beyond not wanting to wait because we're gradually destroying the functionality of our nasama, our ability to exercise good judgment, because the set-apart spirit, this feminine manifestation of the light that we're walking to, is withdrawing, making it more difficult to do, and the fact that we're moving towards an exceedingly deadly time over the next 12 years. But beyond all of that, Rabbinic Judaism is miserable. It's miserable.
Why would you?
Yeah. Why would you want to do that? Why do you want to live in the past? Why do you want to deprive yourself of all of these things? Why believe the lies? So you're giving up nothing except something that is hellish, something that is corrupt and perverse. It's like saying, would you rather have a shower or would you rather be covered in stinky slime for the rest of your life? So you're giving up nothing except something that is disgusting when you part with religion. And when you're with Yahweh, it's a tremendous joy. The last passage I translated, I couldn't even write the commentary on it, was this afternoon. And it appears to be Yeshayah speaking to Yahweh about the fourth Zeruah. And God said to him, don't allow him any rest. Do not allow him any activity, and don't ever allow him to be silent. Now, it was written in the Jusiv, which would be third-person volition, but Nathan, which was the do not allow, was negated. So the question is that a negation of free will for this individual because of the importance of this mission, or is what's being negated is the will of others to silence this individual? Because it could also be interpreted, God, this is just Yashayah. He's telling do not allow anyone to cause this individual to be inactive. Do not allow anyone to silence him. Well, my thinking is probably the second is true, but let's just say it's the first. Let's just say with the negation of Nathan, give, that allow, that God, that Yashayah is pleading with Yahweh, don't allow him to ever stop. Do not allow him to be quiet. So that's how I read it the first time I was going through it, the negation of the Jusuv, too, so it's actually the negation of free will. And the first thing I thought of,
the speaker's desire.
It's Yashayah is the speaker about this individual, and so I thought, okay, well, that sort of explains why I get up at 5:30, come here and sit in the chair, and I do it all day, and I leave the chair at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and can't wait to do it again the next day. So it doesn't matter what else is going on around me. This is just what I do. And I do it without ceasing. And I'm exceedingly vocal about it. And so it could be God just saying, no, we don't have a lot of time left. And Yashayah said, I'm sorry, there'll be time for resting later. Keep him at it. That's a possibility. Let's just say it is. So what? So what? What would you rather be doing? What could you do that is more fun, more liberating, more enlightening, more enjoyable, or more beneficial? And let's just say
I'd much rather be doing that than what I'm doing most days.
Oh yeah, and then add to that, you ought to be celebrating that you just have this opportunity to do it, right? As you said, you would love to do it, but you've got to also earn a living to take care of your family. But if you have the opportunity to do it, you ought to be celebrating it, because what could you do that's more enlightening, more liberating, more enjoyable, or more beneficial? And then as I was going to lunch with Lady after I translated this, I said, so what are you really giving up? To give up, let's just say your free will is being usurped, and that's okay. God finally usurped Pharaoh's free will on the negative side. There are times where he interferes and says, I need to do this to get the proper result. Let's just say that's the case. So all you're losing is time. And how can you lose time when you're getting an infinite amount of it in a better situation? So it does reinforce how serious God is about this, where He's got His most important prophet saying, don't let this stop. Don't let it slow down. No days off. No. Do not allow this message to be silenced, and don't allow it to be halted in any way.
So if I come down, we can't play golf because y'all jump all over me one day, huh?
That is correct. That is correct. You want to come play golf? You go take it up with Yashayah. You can do an arm wrestle, and we'll see if the text changes.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So
that's sad. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
I get it. But, stay off. Come on.
But And Leia's constantly telling me, which we really do need a day off occasionally. And I said, you're right, we do need a day off. And you come back here and say, wow, look how productive today was. I don't know. It is. This is a lot more fun than playing golf. I'm not a very good golfer anyway, so that's part of it. Maybe I was a better golfer. Than,
that's motivation right there.
Maybe that's part of the that's part of the deal. I walked outside the other day. I had my golf clubs because they're outside. We're doing restoring work down below, and because there's we live near the ocean, I noticed that brand new clubs that I bought, they were already rusting. That's probably not a good sign. So Yom Kippurim is the sixth step on the path from being physical to spiritual, from being mortal to eternal, from being flawed to perfected, from being limited to liberated. Those who have answered Yahweh's summons to attend Pesach, Matzah, B'Kodim, Shabbat, Towrah, and now Kippurim have discovered that these celebrations of life benefit our souls and not our bodies. And that's one of the sad things about Rabbinic Judaism. It's all about what you can do in the here and the now, the flesh. If you go to 100 Jewish religious sites and you search salvation, there is no salvation in Judaism. There's nothing beyond this world for them.
That's amazing.
They're restricting their lives and for nothing. Yeah, there's nothing. There's no spirituality. The spiritual side would be Kabbalah, and of course that's demonic.
No.
And so, in Rabbinic Judaism, it's all about the here and now and what you can and cannot do in your life. So it's exceedingly sad that they don't understand that this is about our souls, not our bodies. And yet it says right there, and your soul, your nephesh. Therefore, Yahweh is summoning our souls to answer his invitations to meet with him. He prepares us to enter his presence, and we have to enter his presence as a spiritual being. Now, we're still talking about, hanging around a campfire and camping out, and yet we're going to be spiritual beings, and you say, well, isn't that a conflict? And the answer is not at all. Because all you need to understand is E equals MC squared. God's not going to change the laws of nature as we go forward. He wrote them. He rather likes them. E equals MC squared means that matter and energy are the same things. They're just a different amount of the same thing. That matter is a more constrained form of energy, so that to go from energy to matter, you have to reduce energy by the square of the speed of light. So if we're out, let's say with Yah in the seventh dimension, we're going to be strictly a spiritual being. And like light, we have an entirely different perspective on everything. Time is now a dimension to be navigated, not something to be stuck in. And we will understand what dark energy and dark matter really are and how to navigate this and explore this marvelous universe and have all of it be accessible to us. But in so doing, let's say that we find a solar system that has a planet that is conducive to life. And we say, wow, wouldn't that be swell? I'd like to go down there and have a picnic.
Let's go fishing.
Go fishing. Put your feet in a stream. Feel the wind blow through your hair. Feel the sun on your cheeks. It's all possible because you can transition an aspect of yourself into a material being using E equals MC squared, and then come right back to a spiritual, so you can head back to Shamayim and tell the story of how Kirk thought he was really close clever on improving on the platypus. So
I just draw them. I don't make them.
okay.
I'll draw up the plan.
You will. Why are you so anti-platypus? So
not me.
The whole message of this is that we have a soul, and it's our soul that is being asked to respond to Yahweh's invitation of Yom Kippurim. It is not our physical bodies. It's Yahweh's intent that we celebrate an eternal relationship, and the only way we can do that is with our souls, not our physical bodies, because our physical body deprives us of so many things. With a physical body, you cannot maneuver in time. You can't travel any distance. You can't endure any length of time. Your access is constantly thwarted. You can't show up in the presence of great energy. You'd be annihilated. So it's really important that we understand the value of the soul and the fact that the body means very, very little. So God says, then Yahweh declared this is the summation of where we have just been. Yahweh declared the word of Moshe, saying, exclusively, during the 10th of the 7th month is the day of reconciliations. This exists as a set-apart and special invitation to be called out and meet, for you to approach. Then your soul should respond and answer, and appear before the feminine manifestation of the fiery light to approach Yahweh. To this, the Jewish Publication Society, this is their rendition. The Lord. Now, God said, then Yahweh. They wrote, the Lord. Now, why do they think it's appropriate for them to copy edit God and to remove his name and replace it with a being that is the antithesis of a father? But nonetheless, they wrote, the Lord spoke to Moses. And it's not Moses. That's the Greek version of his name. The ES ending is to accommodate the Greek lexicon. He wasn't a Greek. Well, certainly wasn't a Greek. His name is Moshe, and Moshe means to draw out, which was the whole purpose of the Yatza Exodus, is to draw us out of religious and political corruption. Yahweh, so this thing reads, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Mark. Well, we got Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Mark? Where is Mark here? It's Ot, exclusively, only. There's no Mark. There might be a Chuck, but no Mark. Mark the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a sacred occasion. Kodesh doesn't mean sacred. No. Kodesh means set apart. It's not hard. It's a simple concept. Set apart. That means not common. Your religion is common. Your religion is not set apart. Politics is common. It's not set apart. If you're going to be with God, you're going to be set apart from man and set apart unto him. Probably the most important concept there is, and they rendered it sacred? No, set apart. And then Mikra, which is from Kara, which means to invite and summon, to meet and greet, to read and recite. These nincompoops changed. This is the Jewish Publication Society. They changed Mikra, invitation, which is rather important. If God's issuing an invitation, you ought to pay attention. If he's issuing a summons, you ought to pay attention. If he wants to meet, you ought to respond and say, yeah. As JB would say, just tell me when and where. They changed it to occasion. Oh, we could have let's occasionally meet. No, it's not a sacred occasion for you. It reads, This is a set-apart invitation to be called out and meet. And then it's la atam. The la is a preposition, but as a preposition it means to approach, to draw near. They know that. Could you render it for you? Yes. Is that its primary meaning? No. You shall practice self-denial, they wrote. You should practice self-denial. It doesn't say self, and it sure as hell doesn't say denial. It says, then your soul should respond. How in the hell do you get, then your soul should respond, and you change it to, you shall practice self-denial? Hey, I've got the day of reconciliation. We're going to have this grand party. You should practice self-denial.
Only one cookie.
What are you going to deny? You're going to deny being reconciled to God? You're going to deny the invitation to meet with Him? You're going to deny His name? Well, you did that pretty well. I guess you're going to deny all those things. Maybe it is for you a day of denial. You're denying Yahweh's name. You're denying the Mikra. You're denying the fact that it's set apart. You're denying that you're being given the opportunity to meet. You're denying that it is a day to approach. You're denying it all. I don't know why I'm so critical. It's perfect for them, isn't it?
Yeah. Embrace it if you love it.
And you shall bring. Where is you shall bring? It's you should respond and appear before. Karab does not mean bring. It doesn't mean bring. It means to appear before.
Go up, appear, go up.
Kirk, did you look it up in a lexicon?
Oh yeah. As far as once again, you've got that nice cue. I'm gonna flip it over here.
Yes, which is a new day, the light of the rising sun, a new opportunity, and the Rosh is for a thinking individual, and the aim is being observant.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to call it. I beg your pardon.
What in the world are they missing here? Anyway, so you've got Karab. The last letter is Be'et, home.
Yeah,
so
back to home. Yeah.
Yes, a new day, new light, new opportunity to be observant and enter the home. Karab. It doesn't say, and you shall bring anything. Offering by fire. They got the fire part right. Ishe is the feminine word for fire. They got that part right. How do you get offering out of Ishe? Where is there an offering here? God's offering to meet with us. God's offering an invitation. But this says you shall bring. And, by the way, there is no verb there to bring. You shall bring an offering by fire. To whom? The Lord. And this says Yahweh. I mean, they didn't get any part of that right. I mean, in the opening sentence, they ignored the beginning wall, changed Yahweh to the Lord, inadequately rendered Debar, misspelled Moshe, incorrectly translated Ak, ignored Ba, and added the first day without any textual support. In the second sentence, they mistranslated Kodesh and Mikra, which are the only words which matter. In the third statement, they completely ignored Nefesh and mistranslated Ana, changing it from you should respond to you should practice self-denial. Then they changed the meaning of Karab, appear before, to bring. Ishe is either fire or female, and it became offering by fire, as if the fate of women in Judaism was be offered to the fire. And for bad measure, they replaced Yahweh a second time, changing his name to Satan's title, the Lord. Is it any wonder that religious Jews are lost? then any wonder that God is disgusted by them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of the 37 words, including prepositions, articles, and conjunctions in Yahweh's declaration, there really is only one subject to interpretation: Ishe. Therefore, other than being dumb, blind, and religious, there are no excuses for their remaining 13 mistakes. Kirk, you sent me 4 pages of here are the words.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you just go back to the letters, it doesn't matter if you go to the lexicons or to the letters.
All right.
This is all very straightforward.
Yes, sir.
I would say that the only place where you could say, well, you've feminine manifestation of the fiery light is a stretch. Not much, because of course Ishe means fire, and it's written in the feminine.
Mm-hmm. And it's a torch that lights the way, and all that kind of stuff. It has all those connotations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about all you get. So you're being asked to approach and come near, and you have to choose what you're coming near. I mean, you could.
Well, I'll also add, I don't know whether this is relevant or not, but I added in there about, Moshe appeared before the light. He came up there, and that's the introduction on Korab. So it's not a
uncommon concept.
It's not an odd thing to say. Yeah, it's not a concept. It's
when Yahweh introduced himself to Moshe, he was fire on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
When Yahweh took the children of Yisrael through the wilderness, he was a column of fire. That's how.
I added that too. Yeah, yes. Pillar of light throughout for 40 years, rather.
Right.
Every day.
When Yahweh explains that explains what his nature is most similar to, he says, light.
Right.
Well, what is the thing in our natural world that provides light other than the sun?
Well, it has to be the fire. That's your nighttime light. For centuries.
Right. Yeah. So
it has to relate on a level that they can understand in those days too. I mean, that's what they did. They didn't flip a switch. That was their light. So
that was the light. They built a fire. Correct. Yes. The menorah did not have light bulbs. It had olive oil. Yeah, olive oil luminaries. And the luminary produced light through fire. All 7 of those luminaries had little reservoirs and wicks, and which, when ignited, created a fire. So all of the light came from fire. The menorah represents the Moed Mikre. It represents the covenant. It represents Yahweh. It represents the 7 spirits. It represents the 7 Moed Mikre. It represents so much. It represents the rainbow, even that is the promise of the covenant. And so it is a lamp that lights through fire. So to come into the maternal manifestation of the fiery light is the most reasonable, most direct, most accurate translation of that concept. And you only have 2, what you would say, unchallenged renderings. One is come into the presence of the feminine manifestation of the fire, which is what Isha means. All Isha means. Or Isha, which is feminine, individual, mother, wife, woman. So since God is saying, stay away from women you don't know, of the 2, you can actually combine both concepts into the feminine manifestation of God's fiery light. So I don't think we have much risk in saying that is the proper definition, but the rest of it is exceedingly straightforward, and there's no room in there for an offering by fire. God's not asking us to bring anything other than our soul. That's it.
Huh.
Now, misrepresenting Kodesh is inexcusable, not only because the word's meaning is known, not only because it is used to describe so many things that are special to God, but because being separated from religion to become set apart in the special to Yahweh is essential. Mm-hmm. Kodesh, to be set apart, is one of the most important concepts to ascertain within Yahweh's lexicon. God uses it here to underscore the fact that his mikre are different than religious holidays, making them unique, special, uncommon. To be Kodesh is to be non-religious, it is to be non-conspiratorial, it is to be non-political. All the things that are popular. I mean, conspiracy now is the fastest growing belief system in the world. And probably 40% of the world's population adheres to conspiracy. Second only to conspiracy in terms of belief systems is Christianity. Third would be Islam. Fourth would be socialist, secular, humanism, and communism. Those are all belief systems that are enormously popular, followed by Hinduism. Enormously popular. They're the opposite of set apart. So to be set apart is the antithesis, to be everything that man is not. If you're going to be part of the covenant, then you need to be set apart from those things, which means you cannot be conspiratorial, you cannot be religious, you cannot be political. So it does not mean sacred, it means set apart, different than.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When I looked up Kodesh and Kadash, the verbal root, I couldn't find anything but set apart. I mean, it was really overwhelming.
Yeah.
So pretty crystal clear word.
So I mean, where do you get it? Where did it?
Yes, there's only.
You just got to.
In all fairness, Kirk, what you find is that if you look at any lexicon, the first definition of Kodesh is set apart. The second definition is separated, which means set apart. The third definition is usually special, which means uncommon. But
unique.
Almost all of the lexicons are published by religious publishers.
Oh, I know.
And they're almost all published for the purpose of justifying English translations. And that's why if you're going to translate and you're going to look up the words, you have to have a filter. You've got to know when they're defining the word and when they're justifying their translations. Yeah. And that is particularly true with Strong's, but it's true with all of them. Even the TWAT, the TWOT, it has a
word
lot
book of the Old Testament.
Right, yeah. The word book of the Old Testament. It has so many useful insights. Almost none of them are the insights that say, well, so-and-so had this understanding, because they're all religious nincompoops. But they will say, in this particular stem, you'll find it used in these 4 places to convey the following, and then over here with this stem, it's used to convey this. And it's really a wonderful way to say, all right, I wanted to find this word like Ishe, for example, or in my case, the word that led me to so many realizations, Zeroah. When I came to a place where Zeroah could not be translated sacrificial lamb. And I'm saying, uh-oh, now what do I do? Because that's how I translated it all the way through, was sacrificial lamb, because that's how it's introduced in the Torah. The Torah, the Zeroah is part of the sacrificial lamb of Pesach. And what you find is that God has several definitions of Zeroah depending on who it's being applied to. But one of the great tools of going and finding it is to use the lexicon like the word book of the Old Testament, because it will very quickly say it's used in these places, so you can just go right to them and translate what's there, and now you have how God is using the word in a sentence. That becomes your working definition. And if some words have multiple meanings, you can explore them that way. But you still have to filter out all the religious jargon. But in these cases, Kodesh is pretty straightforward. It means to be set apart, and set apart is such a powerful concept. It means that the set apart spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, is part of Yahweh, set apart from Him. So that tells you that she is not a second person of a Trinity. She's not a separate persona. She's simply part of Yahweh, set apart from Him for a particular purpose. And because Ruach is a feminine noun, she has maternal characteristics. But everything that Yahweh speaks about is Kodesh. Mm-hmm. Everything's important to Him is Kodesh.
I was reading one of my old books, and you know how in Mizraim during the times of Solomon, you know what they called Jerusalem?
No.
The city set apart, the Kodesh city.
Yeah.
It's been around a long time for Yahweh's people.
Yeah. Yes.
They are Kodesh.
Correct. The Mikra are Kodesh. The Moed are Kodesh. The covenant is Kodesh. The Shabbat is Kodesh. Yahweh's spirit is Kodesh. Yahweh's name is Kodesh. Yahweh's people are Kodesh. Everything that's important to God is Kodesh. And so the last thing that Kodesh could mean is sacred, because religions are considered sacred, and they're the antithesis of set apart.
And may I ask one quick question before, because I know we're running out of time, but now that you've got so many books and they're rewritten and everything, my feeling has always been, because so many of these issues, like the one we were just discussing, is addressed in Yada Yah. So when you find someone who wants to do that, I still feel like Yada Yah is what got me here.
Yes.
And it's so much better now, what the parts that I've been sneaking off to read when I had time, is that I would still start somebody there, wouldn't y'all, or y'all have a different opinion?
You would do what now?
If somebody wanted to read this new, I would send them to Yada Yah, that first book. Yada Yah will start there rather than Introduction to God, or unless they just had a thing.
Well, right now, Introduction to God isn't even available. I'm rewriting it, so
I know you're rewriting. I see a lot of things.
It can't be bought and purchased in the hardback, and it's no longer on the website.
Okay.
So it doesn't even exist anymore. There is Written in Stone, which is temporarily presented as a volume of an Introduction to God, but it will be swallowed into the lone volume of Introduction to God, and Introduction to God is getting moved to the far left of the bookshelf. It'll be the first book in the series. But that is what I'm writing right now, and I expected to be finished with it, because I thought I was just going to be rewriting the word and the introduction, the word and the name section of it, and I thought I'd move the two long sections, which is really two full volumes. It's about 1,400 pages. I thought I'd move everything on the Torah into Yada Yah and make it the next two volumes of Yada Yah. So you go from Mikra, Ketzar, Harvest, Moed, which are the three volumes on the Moed Mikra, into two volumes on the Torah. And what I have found is that if it's going to be the introductory book on the shelf, then I need to write it as an introductory book. And when God introduces Himself to people, He has a pattern. So that's the YU. And then why is it that God is making such a fuss over us conveying this message. Why us? And so I'm rewriting it as why you, why me? Because it's going to be
ground
the first
zero.
book on,
that'll be ground zero then, right?
It'll be ground zero. It's going to be
okay.
This is where you begin.
I get it.
But I have a different approach. When somebody says that, which book do I read? I said, well, where are you? If you come up and say, well, I'm a Christian, I'd say, well, then don't start anywhere. Go away. If you can't figure it out and you're a Christian, it's not going to do you. I've got nothing for you. So just go away.
Start with questioning Paul. If you can make it through that, we'll continue.
Yes, but I'll say, if you're genuinely open and you're willing to recognize that Paul was the plague of death and he was demon possessed, and that his very premise is just laughably absurd, and you're therefore open-minded, then read Questioning Paul. It's only now 2,500 pages. If you can make it through Questioning Paul and stay a Christian, we just added another 10 pages or so, maybe 15 pages to Volume 4 of Questioning Paul. So it continues to expand. And the last thing we just added, are you aware of what is alleged that that Yosha cited right after he finished his little mono spirito with Satan? So he's battled it out with Satan. And then what happens next? It's covered in the book of Luke.
Is that the one cast you? I can't. I'm so long ago.
He heads into Nazareth, which doesn't even exist at the time, and then into a synagogue, as was his custom on the Shabbat. A synagogue is a religious center, and it's based upon the Greek language. There is no word that he would close to synagogue in Hebrew. It means to bring together would be synago in the Greek. He waltzes into a synagogue, and then the attendant hands him a book. Now, there were no books at the time, but nonetheless, the attendant hands a book, and the book the attendant hands him isn't the Torah, so he's not there to explain, I'm here as the Pesach lamb. Let's read the story of the Pesach lamb. You know that it comes into the home 4 days before Pesach. You know how the family comes to know the lamb, and you know that on the 14th day of the first month, the Pesach lamb is prepared for the family to eat, and then what happens that after Pesach, the unedible portions are destroyed, and it's for eternal life. And then, of course, that's followed by Matzah, this is what's going to happen to my soul. And no, he doesn't do that. Which would be the only thing he could read that would have any merit is, let me explain to you what's going to happen. I'm the Pesach lamb, and we got Matzah and Bakodim afterwards. That's not what he does. The attendant handed the book of Isaiah. Do you know the book most disdained by religious Jews? Book of Isaiah. You know why the book of Isaiah
the most according to the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Right. Is the book of Isaiah is the book most effective at condemning Judaism. Rabbis hate it, and so. Oh, that's, by the way, another problem with the Christian New Testament. All the arguments about the rabbis, Yosha taking him to task, and the rabbis that were scheming to kill him, and all this stuff. Rabbi here, rabbi there. Paul was the best of the rabbis. He went to rabbinical school. All that stuff. There were no rabbis in the first century. There were no rabbis in the first century. First rabbi doesn't exist until the second century. Wee little problem. Of course, there was no Nazareth. Is another wee little problem. Anyway, he waltzes into the synagogue in a place that doesn't exist, Nazareth, and he starts reading from the scroll of Isaiah. And the story he tells in the scroll of Isaiah is about the approach to Sukkah. That's the prophecy he's reading. And then when he finishes the prophecy, which he misquotes it, misapplies it, adds things to it that aren't there, takes things away from it that are there, stops mid-sentence. By the way, the part that he quoted is the longest run-on sentence I have ever seen. I'm constantly accused of having run-on sentences. Well, that's the run-on sentence to end all run-on sentences. And he just stops right in the middle of it. And then he says that these words are all being fulfilled before your very eyes, and you're listening. And it's speaking of something that's happening between now and 2033. And so we added that to the end of questioning Paul, just to say, this is how badly the quotation is. This is how badly it's misconstrued and misapplied. And oh, by the way, by him saying this applies to me as being fulfilled in your presence, and there was nothing that pertained to his life, and nothing that would be fulfilled in his life. It was off by 2,000 years. And yet you got billions of Christians, and not one of them is capable of comparing the actual text of Yeshayah and the context of that text to what is alleged that Luke would put in his mouth, who wasn't there at the time. So it is important for us to be very logical as we approach these things. Mikra is another term. To rob the Mikra of its relevance by rendering it an occasion is really a crime. Mm-hmm. Its very composition begs us to the my, the mik before kara, the m. It's transliterated mi, but it's in Hebrew. The I sound is from the y. My in Hebrew is an interrogatory. It means to consider the implications of something. So it begs us to ponder the implications of kara. Being summoned and invited, reading and recited, being greeted and welcomed, while making proclamations about being called out. Called out is a very similar concept to Kodesh, set apart. Called out, set apart.
Separating.
So the invitation is to be called out on the set apart mikra. They dovetail together beautifully. So how is one to know what to do when the instructions are tossed aside? I think that's another of the words that you analyzed. Mikra.
Yes.
Mem, kof.
Well, the mem,
resh,
to ponder and consider what's being asked to do, right?
Yeah.
And then with the quaff, quaff can be understood as sun up or sun down. I said that today, according to Yahweh, begins in the sundown, so I was looking at more of as a night is when the day begins on the night in the evening. Mm-hmm. So the light is generally more colorful then, and even all the colors of the rainbow can reappear. Like down where you are, you can see them beautifully.
Yeah, it does mean. Yeah, it means sun on the horizon, and you are. We're free to view it as the sun on the horizon at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day. You and my wife both like to see Kof as the sun on the horizon on the end of the day. You must be evening people. I'm a morning person. It's like Dode. He got up early in the morning and he was at it. I'm a morning person. I see the Kof as the beginning of a new day. This is an opportunity to learn something more, share something more, get something done that's worthwhile. For me, it's a new opportunity. It's a new day. But you can have it be the end of your day if you want it. That's okay.
Well, anyway, I do, Coach. Just gathering together, and you're telling your stories of everything you've done.
Yeah, okay. By the way, the M here, it's for me, it's just perfect because as I'm looking at the sunrise, when I'm looking at it rise over the water.
Over the ocean, yeah.
You're right. And when I see it set, I'm seeing it set over the ocean. And so I just love the Mem Kof of Mikra. It's just, it's perfect. And people know that I actually named my boat Kara. So, from the basis of Mikra. But it is waves, water, so waves on the sea, mikra, so it's waves, sunrise or sunset, the horizon.
That's a nice term. That's a nice twist on it too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can throw that in. I'll add that one. And then, of course, you got the Rosh or the Resh, representing those who, of their own free will, to shamar Yahweh's words and accept an invitation. Because it is an invitation, you can refuse it. So you certainly have free will in there to show a desire. And then, of course, the Aleph represents Yahweh to me, and more times than not in this context, the power, family, authority, leader, provider, enabler. And in this context, it is the Ruach that appears as the maternal representation of Yahweh as well, because we're going to meet the light. So, on these mikras. So, yeah, it's all the way down to the verbal roots and even the two-letter roots. It's the same thing over and over again. So,
and to squander all of that with occasion, that's a crime.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
You know, and speaking of instructions, perhaps the rabbis can explain why God, who created our nephesh soul, would have used this word as the subject of the sentence and then to describe the invitees if his intent was for their souls to be excluded.
That's a
if you're going to deny your soul, why would God write it the way he wrote it? Asked another way, since these words were spoken by God and written in the Torah by Moshe, what gives man the right to alter God's testimony? Do the rabbis actually believe they're smarter and more articulate than Yahweh? We turn to translating the next word, anah. It's not difficult. And yet the rabbis managed to butcher it. The verb appears over 400 times in the Torah and prophets. Especially telling, it is used repeatedly in connection with the mikra invitations throughout them. Now, God offers a mikra invitation, a mikra singular, offers an invitation, and then he encourages us to anah. Well, what do you do with an invitation? RSVP?
Yeah.
Respond?
Absolutely.
Reply? Answer?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Not hard to figure this out, which is the most intelligent thing to do, and indeed the most polite when receiving a summons or invitation from the Almighty. Further, this is Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations, denoting Yahweh's return on behalf of his family. So how dense did the Hasidic have to be to turn such a wonderful occasion into a day of deprivation and affliction?
Wonderful party. Yeah.
Now, keeping it real, rendering anah as usual practice self-denial requires a level of stupidity that is almost unfathomable, and arrogance. It is akin to saying, God is coming to save us, so quick, let's deny him and keep him from doing so. Let's slap the face of God. Something the rabbis are...
Slap the invitation right out of his hand.
Let's do that. That is what we ought to do. Let's deny it. Let's deny the invitation. That'll work out fine for us. And the previous chapter, while we were reviewing Yeshaya 56, that was we ended our program last week on Yeshaya 56. We learned that all of those who are celebrating this day with Yahweh are joyous. So by misrepresenting Anah, rabbis have deliberately excluded themselves from this reunion. Well, that may be a good place for us to pause. We can pick this up next week. It's good to have you back with us, JB.
Yes, JB.
Hello. Hope to be back more often.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear you. Hope all is well with your family and career, and we'll just continue going through this. We have a lot to say because Yahweh has a lot to say about Yom Kippurim. It gets more prophetic ink than any other day by a huge shot. The entire book of Zechariah is about Yom Kippurim. And we're going to learn some things in Zechariah that'll blow you away. Just so insightful, so, the way that he's woven this story together. And then the entire book of Malachi, the last book, the last prophet. It's from beginning to end. It is all about Yom Kippurim. So this is a really important day in the life of Israel. It is our calling. It's our purpose is to Towrah, Yom Kippurim, so that Yah's people know that this is the day that they must come out of religious and political Babylon, return to Yahweh, and reconcile their relationship. So look forward to being with you next week. May Yah bless you all, and happy Shabbat. Good night.
Shalom, shalom, y'all.